sorry?
I forgive you. Okay, then.
Hey guys, Pete here. Today I wanted to talk about what's going on with Miss Casey in Severance, the 107-hour-old part-time innie who we first meet as the wellness counselor on the severed floor at Lumon. Then later we get the inexplicable twist that she looks like Mark's wife who he believes is dead. I'm going to go over everything we know about the character and speculate as to what might be going on here right after this quick spoiler warning. If you haven't watched all 9 episodes of the first season of Severance, then this video might not be for you. And with that out of the way, let's get into it. We first meet Ms. Casey after Irv falls asleep on the job. He's sent for a wellness session. And what I like about this first interaction is that because everything is somewhat bizarre on the severed floor, Ms. Casey's quirks don't seem that out of the ordinary. The session consists of her reading facts about the severed employee's outie, who they are at home. You do notice that the way she delivers these and the way she encourages him not to react is strange, but it feels like it's par for the course. And because of her position, you aren't expecting her to be a severed employee at this point. The next time we see her do a session is with Mark. She gives him a ball of clay to sculpt his feelings, and when he sculpts the tree from his wife's accident, you come away a lot more concerned about what's going on with him. Questions like how does his innie know about that come up, and what is going on with Cobell? She stole the candle that Gemma made from his basement and made it part of this session that she wanted him to do and that she's now watching closely. Ms. Casey's behavior becomes intriguing when she comes to MDR to observe Helly after her suicide attempt. Out of her element, she seems much more awkward and just generally more inexperienced. You saw her as a professional before, and now she seems more like a child. And there's a noticeable difference compared to what you saw when Helly's innie woke up for the first time. They're all sort of like children. They don't have experiences, but there seems to be something different about Ms. Casey. Later, after she finds out she's being retired, you learn that that time in MDR was her greatest memory. This was the longest period of time she was ever awake for, and the most people she'd ever been around at the same time. She likes Mark based on that and their other interactions. She thinks he's nice because he's trying to help her, but overall they don't appear to recognize each other. The big reveal at the end of episode 7 was Mark taping the picture of his wife back together, showing us that they look exactly the same. Later you get confirmation that Milchek and Cobell know about that. They know that these two people were married, and Milchek remarks that it's a good thing they don't recognize each other because it shows the chips work. And we don't really get to learn much more in season 1 because Cobell has her sent back to the testing floor, which is all kind of Mark's fault because he tricked her into leaving the room so that he could get Helly away from her. When a normal severed employee retires, it's like a death for that innie. If you never go back to work on the severed floor to activate those memories, they effectively cease to exist. As far as we can tell, Miss Casey doesn't have an outie in the real world. This really wouldn't work. Everyone thinks Mark's wife Gemma is dead, so it would cause problems if she was walking around town. We don't know much about the testing floor beyond the fact that she takes an elevator that goes down from the severed floor. It seems pretty top secret, and it seems she never leaves there, so it's possible this is what Petey was talking about when he said that he found some employees that never left. As far as Gemma's concerned, we've gotten some details, but mostly she served to be this absence that Mark feels in his life. She was a Russian literature professor. Everyone around Mark seemed to like her. She was allergic to nutmeg, she liked other people's pets, and she thought cardigans looked ridiculous. From what we can tell, they were in love and they had a good relationship. One issue they seemed to have was that they thought about having kids but weren't able to. Her death was unexpected and it left Mark's life in shambles. The people around him all understand how the loss affected him. They know he's in bad shape, he clearly drinks too much, but they seem to understand where it's all coming from. So how did she end up living beneath the severed floor? Or living at all, considering people accept that she died in this car accident? If you try to put it all together, there are basically 3 starting points. First is that she never died. Somehow this accident was staged, it didn't happen, and she just took herself out of Mark's life. Second is that she's a clone or a robot or something that isn't exactly Gemma, but is based on her. The third is that the accident is real, but somehow Lumon got a hold of her body and is experimenting on it. The first one, her being alive and just choosing to live on the testing floor at Lumon, doesn't seem likely to me. I guess I should say that I do expect that Lumon is up to some nefarious stuff behind the scenes. But people have to volunteer for the Severance program. It's not a secret. The corporation doesn't have to coerce them into this, because for some people their conditions are so miserable that they think like, what the hell, maybe it'll make things better. If you read the Lexington letter, they give a pretty good example of how some people would be enthusiastic about the chance to earn a decent salary and overlook the possible drawbacks of getting the chip. Leaving everything you care about to live there forever is a totally different situation. This would be like committing suicide. Your Audi would cease to exist, and you would have to put your family through the pain of experiencing your death. This is not the kind of thing that people would do for money. There's a different level of desperation that would be involved. Plus, we know there's public backlash to Severance just for the work time hours. It doesn't seem possible that they would be able to get away with offering full-time severance. And from there, things get pretty complicated as far as trying to put together a story of how that would work. The second idea, her being a clone or a robot, is more in line with common sci-fi situations, but I think for it to be interesting, there would have to be a lot more going on. Obviously, they are this huge corporation that could make robots. It's possible. What point is there to the one we've been introduced to being Mark's ex-wife? Or if it were clones, it's sort of the same question. Why clone Gemma? And then have Mark's innie work around her? What would be the motivation behind that? This was one of the early theories that came mostly from the way she interacted in MDR. And then the obvious thing where she's dead, so why is she walking around? Could she be a robot? I don't think this is the way that they're going, but we'll see what happens. Lumon getting her body after the accident seems like the most popular theory at the moment. Kier appears to be a company town where they have a lot of pull and have their hands in a lot of pies. There's this weird family cult at the center of it all, but they're a medical technology conglomerate, so it's not a stretch to think that they would have connections and possible control of the local hospitals. Maybe they could make it look like someone died and removed the body. Or probably the most popular theory is that when someone is brain dead or in a coma, they take that person to the testing floor and Lumon brings them back in some fashion. So far, nothing about the Severance chips makes it seem like they can do anything other than spatially dictate access to a person's memories. You can only access the innie's memories at work when the chip is activated, or as we've seen with the overtime contingency protocol. On the testing floor, there might be something completely different going on though, and that might account for the need for some bodies. I think these theories are the most probable. I do think there was an accident, and from what we've seen from Lumon, you can imagine them conducting experiments on living subjects if the opportunity presented itself. In the example of a patient being brain dead, and especially if they had a do not resuscitate order, it's plausible that they could justify this in some twisted way. So Gemma being brain dead after the accident seems like the easiest way to get from A to B. The fact that so many people came up with this idea independently shows that the setup is there. But I think there's one problem with it. If she was brain dead, it's not clear that Mark's wife is in there at all at this point. The coma might be a better route to keep the idea of them coming back together alive, but then you're getting into even murkier waters about how they're obtaining bodies for their experiments, as if reanimating brain-dead people isn't murky enough. As far as having severed Mark interact with her, this would reinforce that their memories are completely separate. As Milchek said, that the chips are working. But it does seem that there's more going on than that. Harmony was pushing this. She essentially tempted them to remember each other. It was like she was trying to make it happen. I tend to think that this is probably more about her. I think she may have her own agenda, even though she's a true believer in Kier, and somehow this knowledge that she has about Mark and Gemma fits into her overall plan. I don't want to go too far away from Miss Casey in this video, because there's a lot of speculation to be done on what Lumon is up to and how that aligns with what Harmony is interested in personally. But the corporation is not just bringing people back to pad out their workforce. I think that Cobell probably wants to bring back her mother based on her shrine, the Charlotte Cobell Hospital bracelet, and the breathing tube, but I'll get more into that when I make a video about what Lumon's plans might be. There's one bit from a post-finale interview that I want to touch on. Variety asked the show's creator Dan Erickson what he could say about why Mark and Gemma are involved in this situation to begin with. The interviewer made the point that it was clear that Lumon faked her death, and that ultimately worked out in a way that prompted Mark, not knowing any of this, to join Lumon. But it's unclear why Lumon wants them. Erickson said there's a question of sort of who was targeted first. Was Mark targeted because of his relationship to Gemma, or was it the other way around? And that's something that we don't see this season, but we will see in subsequent seasons. That's the big question, what's special about Mark? And is it actually that there's something special about him, or is it more about Gemma? And he was sort of pulled in. Those are all left unanswered this season, but we will get into it. So we do have that to look forward to. I also just want to add that there's a strong implication that Lumon could be involved in the car accident that led to the death of the whistleblower from the Lexington Letter book. In that, her innie was able to communicate with her outie, who got worried about what might be happening on the severed floor. She tried to go to the press, who were sympathetic to Lumon. One of the editors there had the last name Milchek, so they never printed the story, and the author died not long after that. So that's something to think about. I think that's a good place to leave things. I think we'll learn that Gemma is alive, but if Lumon has their way, she'll never leave the building. It's not clear how much of the woman Mark loved is still inside, but considering this is his motivation for getting severed in the first place, I'd like to find out. A lot of season 1 revolved around him trying to get himself back together to become whole again, and we did hear Helly ask Dylan if love transcends severance. Let me know in the comments what you think is going on and how you expect things to play out. Please like this video if you enjoyed it. Please subscribe to my channel if you haven't already. And thanks for watching. I'll talk to you soon.